Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 10, part 2 of Harmonia plugin tutorials. In this episode, we continue with the rest of the scatter system, starting with the spline scatter. When you press Add Spline Scatter, you're greeted with a menu much like the one we went through for the mesh scatter. You have a slot for your instance meshes, and dropping a mesh in immediately shows it appearing along the spline that's been added to your scene, with the same transform settings we described before. What's different is the parameters section underneath. The first item is spacing, the distance between instances along the spline. Reduce it and the number of instances goes up because they're sitting closer together. Then the offset shifts the line to the left or the right of the spline, depending on whether you enter a negative or a positive value. Jitter adds randomness to the position of each instance along the line, so it doesn't read as a perfect row. And random offset L and random offset R do the same thing sideways, pushing instances out to the left or the right by a random amount. Align to spline matches the rotation of your instances to the direction of the line, so with it on, your meshes always face the way the spline is running. Then, fill closed area. The spline we have here is just a line. It isn't a closed shape. But if I click Fill Closed Area, it closes the shape for me, and fills the inside with the instance meshes I've selected. It's an easy way to mark out an area and fill it. Conform to ground. Part of my spline is running underneath the mesh, but because this is on and conform distance is 0, which as we covered in part 1 means unlimited rather than disabled, the instances are placed on top of the surface, which is what we want. And just like the mesh scatter, you can set a specific conform distance to control that more tightly. Alternate meshes. With a second mesh in your instance list and this switched on, the scatter alternates between the two. If I extend the spline, you can see we get 6 of the first mesh and 6 of the second. With a third mesh, it becomes A, B, C, A, B, C, repeating down the line. Then mirror line, which is useful when you're building a path. Turn it on and set a mirror distance, positive or negative, and your spline is mirrored to either side of the main line. The nice part is that the mirror gets its own controls, so you can tailor it to your needs after you've added it, and Reset Mirror puts it back if you want to start over. Down in spline points, you control roundness and sharpness. Click points on the spline in the viewport, and you can make them linear or curved, or sharpen and round them. Or you can set the main line as a whole to linear or curve, and the mirror line separately, so you have control at the point level and at the line level. There's also a seed here, with a dice button, if you want to re-roll the randomization. And much like the mesh scatter, the spline scatter works with the brush. With your spline scatter selected, switch to brush mode, and you can keep adding instances using the same settings as your instance meshes. Single lets you move or scale them one at a time. Lasso lets you grab a group, and Paint Edits shows how many edits you've made so far. With that, we can move on to the brush scatter, which is the simplest of the three. Click it, and the system goes straight into brush mode. Add an instance mesh, set your transform much like the other systems, and start painting onto any surface you want. Left-click adds, and holding Shift erases. Single lets you pick an instance and move it around. Control adds to your selection, and holding Alt duplicates one. You have the same lasso here as well, and a minimum distance, to stop instances stacking up on each other as you paint. One nice thing to point out, because conform to ground is on, even when I lasso a group and drag them onto this slope, they don't disappear under the ground. They're placed at the correct height and the correct inclination on top of the mesh. It's straightforward, and it really speeds up painting meshes and scattering objects into your scene. And like the other systems, each scatter has its own switch, so you can turn one off while you're working without turning off the level, and you can move it to whichever level you want. I can put this one into foliage demo, for example. Each scatter also shows its own stats, how long it took to build, and how many instances are inside it. With that, we come to the conclusion of part 2 of the scatter system. We hope you liked it. In the next episode, we'll go over the Harmonia floor generator, and we'll discuss that system in detail. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.